Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time for attending this session on accelerating digital supply chain journey with Appian. Now, lost in transit, delayed delivery, missed timelines, counterfeit items. If you're a supply chain manager, I'm sure these words must have given you nightmares at some point in time in your life, right? So, and the history of supply chain dates back to probably the history of mankind, right back to the time when we were bartering, we were exchanging, we were trying to understand somebody's demand and then supply it. Well, the supply chain has grown manifold, gone manifold, improved manifold, but still problems remain. In today's session, we'll try to talk about some of the key supply chain problems that we have seen our partners and companies across the world, even some leaders, are facing today, how digital technologies are disrupting the supply chain, and how supply chain problems could be mitigated leveraging some of the same digital technologies, right? And how within Cognizant, we have developed some solutions to address some of these problems. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce ourselves. I'm Pradyot Biswas. I'm a consulting lead from Cognizant BPM practice. With me, I have Avirup Dasgupta. He's an APM COE lead. Like I was mentioning, a traditional supply chain has, more or less like a unilateral relationship between consumers, retailers, manufacturers, suppliers. It's like you understand customers' demand. Traditionally, you do some bit of forecasting. You talk to your suppliers, you inform supplier about the demand, and that's how you run your supply chain. And make no mistakes, supply chain partners are one of the early adopters of automation, right from the manufacturers to logistics partners to any other vendors who are participating in supply chain have been implementing automation technology for long. So what's the problem? The problem is they have been implementing automation within themselves, within the peripheries of the organization. But there has been probably a gap in having an end-to-end view of it. Right? Probably there has been some gap in developing an ability to understand and locate and track and trace where is it a problem happening, how can I mitigate it, even if it goes beyond my capabilities, right? Essentially, in an essence, it's siloed operations. Even if there is a skew in demands, probably we have not been able to respond to it the way we should be able to do that. Now comes the often used word, digital business imperatives. Now I say digital is dead. Why? Because digital is ambient. Digital is everywhere. Digital is a part of life as much as probably automation is. We don't really talk about automation. We don't really talk about automating manufacturing. We don't really talk about it. It's a given today, right? In a similar way, digital is a given. Digital has impacted us so much. It has impacted the business. It has impacted the business ecosystem, the participating entities in the business ecosystem. It has impacted the customers. The customers' demands have changed. Their behavior has changed. Their demands are ever changing. Today, he or she wants to, request for something from anywhere, and he wants it to be fulfilled anywhere, right? So, like I said, here comes the digital to rescue of the companies. Customers expect an omni-channel view. Customers need, of course, being fast, being secure is a given for a customer. Now, like I was mentioning, with the advent of technology, definitely certain great capabilities have come in, but certain complexities have also arisen. Complexities like fraud, like counterfeit. These are omnipresent in today's life. In fact, the case study that we're going to talk about slightly later for medical device supply chain, we'll see that there are approximately, in a survey by WHO, it's about 8% of the medical devices which we use today are counterfeit items, right? And definitely these counterfeit items have a great impact on the profitability of the device manufacturers, on the performance of the providers, for obvious sake, and never to mention on the health of the patients, right? So we will talk about it in a larger depth today as to how digital supply chain capabilities can really help take care of some of this nonsense which is happening today. Now, in essence, what a customer-centric digital supply chain would look like. This would probably look something like this, where we have a mesh-like design where all the entities are interconnected. No longer factories are only talking to consumers, or no longer factories are only talking to its suppliers or the consumers. Suppliers are no longer talking to only manufacturers. There are nth level of manufacturers today, like we know that, complex, something like USS Midway that we're going to see today, manufacturing of such an aircraft carrier or an aircraft would probably have thousands and thousands of suppliers, involved in the supply chain today. To be able to optimally manage the supply chain is a humongous task, and that is something is been ably handled by digital technologies today. And we will talk about it, how technologies like Appian can help redesign the supply chain at ease. So essentially, the supply chain of today is connected. It helps connect systems, processes, devices. It is collaborative, where all the business entities and processes can collaborate themselves. The processes are no longer confined within the territories or within the peripheries of the organization. It cuts across organizations. They are smart. They can be accessed from anywhere. Like I was mentioning, customers today should be able to place a request from anywhere and can demand to be fulfilled anywhere. And they are agile. They should be able to respond to any external stimuli that can happen. For example, let me give you an example. We're talking about medical device manufacturing, right? And we all know that certain medical devices need to be kept at a certain temperature, right? Now, just think about a situation. Like I was mentioning, our supply chain is extremely complex. And let's say a device is being manufactured from China and coming here. Now, how do we ensure that all the way along its journey, the requisite temperature or other environmental parameters were maintained? And what if it was not maintained? What has happened? Did anybody take any action on it? Oftentimes, no actions are being taken on it because our logistics partners would probably be working in silos, with the manufacturer and with the provider. So nobody would know if along the journey a requisite temperature control was maintained. Now we will we'll talk about a solution. Something that we have developed that will tell you how exactly we can handle this. Now, business benefits of digitalization are immense. Like I was mentioning, most of the things I was mentioning, I just like to share some of the observations that we have captured. Cognizant's Institute of Future of Work has actually found out from a survey carried out with CEOs of large companies that about 40% of the companies have experienced increase in their revenue. The companies that have embraced digital supply chain. About 38% of the companies with similar capabilities have reported about 10% increase in their operating margin. And about 60% companies with same digital supply chain capabilities have experienced significant enhancement in the risk mitigation capabilities. However, is all happy? No, not really. There is still a long way to go. In the same survey, we have also seen that only 9% of the companies have reported an end-to-end digitalization of the supply chain, right from the strategy to execution. So even those companies who realize the importance of supply chain, it is not really there. They still have a long way to go. In fact, it corroborates by another finding where it said about top 3 agendas of the CEOs is supply chain modernization. And 70% of the executives are not really happy with the supply chain performance till now. That shows that speaks a lot that how satisfied supply chain executives are about their own. Now, we talked about different capabilities, etc. If we see the capabilities from maturity perspective, we see that, in our point of view, there are 4 maturity levels that the supply chains may fall in. It's visible, alert, decisive, and autonomous. What does it mean? And by any means, I'm not talking about companies who have not automated the supply chain. I'm expecting companies that, the candidates are already organizations who have implemented some amount of supply chain automation. At level 1, at those companies where, or rather those ecosystems where there is a bare amount of visibility, against each other, where supply chain companies know that what is happening in the supply chain within the periphery of other organization, other participating organization. At level 2, they're alert. If something else happens, some SLA is breached, some exceptions happen, certain actions are taken. At level 3, it's decisive. There are some rule-based actions, some automation happening based on certain events which is occurring. And then level 4 is the autonomous, where you have an ecosystem where there are intelligent or cognitive processes in action, where based on certain events, certain actions are being taken, where there is minimal human intervention, where there are intelligent bots that are taking action on behalf of human. That's level 4 of supply chain maturity. And all these capabilities are something we call the supply chain control tower. This is essentially a set of capabilities which can broadly be clubbed into 3 blocks. The first block is 360-degree view. Next is cognitive brain, which is cognitive computing engine, and then is collaborative response mechanism. Let's talk what are these capabilities slightly in details, and what are some of the Appian capabilities which help realize this. By 360 view, what we say is the capabilities like Appian records that helps connect to different underlying applications or systems. Systems like blockchain, like IoT devices, like order management applications, like ERPs, etc., etc. Right? Now, as you all are aware of, these are standard automated systems which supply chain participants are definitely using. The key capability that we are talking about is essentially visualize the information, consolidate the information, and make it available for analysis, so that some actionable there's some actionable insight, some action can be taken from the data. Now, the next capability is the cognitive computing engine. What we say by that? Now that we have consolidated data by something like Appian records, we have consolidated information and got a 360 view in a dashboard. We can now, you can use standard business rules driven capabilities, or we can use some AI capabilities like Google AI or Amazon AI services, or maybe Watson's of the world. We can use that and we can take some action on it, right? There are some predictive or adaptive analytic actions that we can take on this. We can do things like what if scenarios, et cetera, essentially to identify certain patterns and take action on it. It could be certain disruption. We can model certain disruption that can happen in a supply chain and then can act on it, right? Or be ready to act on it. And finally, the collaborative response mechanism, what I was just mentioning, is about how we can collaborate with different entities within the supply chain and act on the insight that we have got from it. It could be either leverage some bots to respond to some external signal, or some predictions which have been flagged off by my cognitive brain that I just talked about, and it can also help you to track at real time what is happening. For example, we'll show it to you how our solution can help you track where the good is in Google Maps. And and can identify something like temperature increase within, let's say, a container, and can send an SMS to the truck driver, which is tracking. So which is, in a way, handling or responding to certain extraordinary events, which is an aberration of out of ordinary action. Now, based on all these features that we just talked about, we have developed a solution called track and trace solution, which helps to track and monitor the entire supply chain. And this is something that we have developed using Appian's low-code platform. We have used AI/ML capabilities, and we have also implemented blockchain. We'll talk at length how we have leveraged blockchain to implement different partners as part of the blockchain, and also how we have integrated with IoT devices to capture some extraordinary events and then act on it. I invite Avirup to take you through the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Badal. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me just talk about how Appian is involved in this whole supply chain management workflow. So as my colleague Pradut was talking about the nightmare in supply chain workflow and then putting some control tower around it. So one thing was coming like multiple times is like omni-channel, then anywhere, anytime, and mobile on the go. So all these things are like Appian is best fit for. And then we also thought like it's a low-code platform, so let's build Appian workflow around this whole supply chain and integrate AI, IoT, and blockchain to implement this workflow. So the idea was simple. So let's build an Appian workflow, Appian solution, which implement this, track this whole supply chain workflow, and then stores the data in the blockchain so that nobody can tamper the data, and it doesn't allow to counterfeit the products, and then integrate AI with it so that you can select the best logistic partner for the shipment, and then use IoT to track the device and its temperature or other parameters around it. So let's talk about the workflow which Pradut was explaining. So what happens in pharmaceuticals or healthcare industry, the manufacturer actually does a shipment validation testing before it loads the medical devices on the truck for the shipment. Then once this shipment validation testing is done, it ensures that the shipment is good and it will not be tampered during the transit. Then it reaches to the distributor or dealer, and then they take care of the rest of the part to moving that device to the hospitals. So it's a simple workflow, nothing wrong in it. But the moment something goes wrong, the device is not functioning or is failing, so hospital actually informs distributors that the device is malfunctioning. And that's when the nightmare starts, which Pradut was explaining. The distributor actually informs manufacturer, and as you can see in this whole workflow, there is no way you can identify like at what stage the device got damaged. It could be while coming from medical manufacturer to the dealer, or it could be from dealer to the hospital. So there is nobody to take the ownership, and that's why manufacturer has to do a replacement, free replacement basically. So it's leading to the few challenges and few pain points, right? One thing is the manufacturer has to take the cost of a free replacement, so that means it's losing money. And then hospitals are also unhappy because they have to go through all this recall process, so they are losing time. So it's basically lack of trust, visibility, and ownership. And the same way, during the transit, it could be that the product could be tampered. It could be a different damaged product or a counterfeit products you guys have, the hospital has received. So that's again the problem about the trust. So this is the workflow we put around Appian so that we can solve these problems. So here what we have done is the manufacturer, when they have to ship a medical product, they go to the Appian records, choose the product, and then from there they select the shipment initiation. Once the shipment is initiated, they have to write down all the details like the location of the hospital, and the moment they fill up the form, we actually integrated with Amazon AI, which identifies based on the locations, the cost, the rates, and the number of incidents. They basically find out the best logistic partner for this shipment. And once the shipment is ready, it generates a QR code. Then the QR code you can actually put on the shipment, and then you just load it on the truck. The moment it loaded on the truck, it starts, the Appian actually integrates with the GPS tracker to start tracking the location of the actual package. Now, as it goes through the transit, if something goes wrong, so suppose as Pradut was explaining that a medical device may need to keep in a certain temperature. And if the temperature fluctuates or if temperature goes down, up, it may damage the device. And so the moment Appian workflow is integrated with the IoT, the moment the temperature fluctuates or it goes to certain warning temperature threshold, it triggers an SMS to the driver. And it also notifies the manufacturer that the temperature goes to the warning level. Now, we use Twilio to send the SMS. So we integrated Twilio with Appian to send the SMS to the driver. Now, if the temperature goes to the critical threshold, so it actually sends an SMS to the field agent from the manufacturer, so that field agent can reach out to the truck and actually do an inspection that what happens to the truck, why the temperature is gone to the critical level. Now, if it suppresses the critical temperature threshold as well, then it actually initiates a recall process. So maybe it's in the between, it hasn't even reached the dealer. So it starts the recall workflow in the Appian system, and it actually informs manufacturer, dealers, and the hospitals. So it's a seamless recall. So you don't need to go all the way to the hospital. Then the hospital has to trigger that and then come back to the manufacturer. So, and if those things, if there is no changes happen in the temperature, the package reaches to the distributor, and then distributor actually goes to the Appian screen and accepts the receive of the package, and then initiates the delivery to the hospital. Once it reaches to the hospital's agents can log in, acknowledge the receive, and the workflow ends over there. So here there are a few things we have leveraged here. So main thing is Appian's record. We leveraged along with the case management framework to build this whole workflow. And along with that, we use Twilio, as I said, that to send the SMS. And we also use Amazon AI to identify the best logistic partner based on all the locations, number of incidents, and other parameters. We also use blockchain to store all the data so that there is no problem with the data, and nobody can complain about that the device which was shipped, it was tampered, or it was not the right device which we received. And the QR code which we use to generate the QR code before the shipment, putting it on the shipment, and then once hospital receives that, they can scan the QR code again and make sure that the same device has arrived to their place. With this, I will just play a small video of the actual application, what I have talked about so far, and then you will be able to see the actual Appian screen and how it has been done.
Healthcare and pharmaceutical manufacturers perform shipment validation testing before the medical device package is loaded into the truck for shipment and transportation. Shipment validation testing ensures that the package will be safe and medical devices will not be tampered during the transit. After the arrival of the shipment, the distributors and dealers are involved in transporting the package to the hospital. In case of malfunctioning, the hospital reports the failure of a device, and the dealer contacts the manufacturer. In this entire chain, no one has the full visibility and ownership, and hence, the manufacturer provides a free replacement. Due to all this, the manufacturer bears the additional cost of replacement, as well as the cost of transportation. The end customer is also dissatisfied, and such frequent complaints can result in recall of the product by FDA, thereby leading to a loss of business to manufacturer. Another business problem that plagues the medical device industry is the presence of counterfeit devices. The problem is even more drastic in the pharmaceutical industry. Cognizant has reimagined the track and trace process with Appian and IoT-enabled blockchain for medical device transit flow. Cognizant's solution uses Appian records for dynamic case management, to enable proactive action for any incident faced during transportation and prevent a recall. The solution leverages Appian AI to suggest the best possible logistics partner for shipment. It uses Appian mobile app and blockchain to validate the genuineness of a product, and utilizes smart contracts to validate real-time data and invoke rules in case of a breach. Being the immutable single source of truth, the blockchain enhances transparency and trust across participating stakeholders, and provides the capability to view, verify, and validate the records across the distributed ledger. With some modifications, this use case and solution can also be further expanded to include drug manufacturing by pharmaceutical companies. This is the manufacturer's dashboard to view all medical devices in the blockchain's distributed ledger. The manufacturer registers the medical device that is to be shipped to a hospital in the manufacturer ledger. Using Appian's web API, the device is successfully registered in the blockchain on IBM Cloud and is viewable by all participants in the blockchain: the hospital, the distributor, and the manufacturer. The unique identifier of the medical device is hashed and a new block is created. Appian Records is used to provide a 360-degree view of the medical device shipment request. The manufacturer initiates a shipment request. Appian AI suggests the best-suited logistics partner based on past performance and ratings. Appian's QR code plugin is used to generate an encrypted QR code of the device identifier. Appian's PDF viewer is leveraged for label printing. The medical device is then labeled, packed, and shipped. The IoT sensor monitors the temperature of the medical device. The device now reaches the distributor warehouse. The IoT sensor tracks a spike in temperature. This is recorded in the blockchain for the participants to proactively manage this incident. Appian Dynamic Case Management and Decisions and Rules is used to create and route the incident. A call is made to manufacturer field personnel to inspect the device at the distributor's warehouse using Appian Tivolio call. The field personnel inspects and clears the product for shipment to hospital. The hospital receives the shipment. The hospital successfully scans and verifies the QR code of the device to ensure the authenticity of the product. Track and trace. The Appian-enabled IoT and blockchain solution provides the much-needed transparency and single integrated view of medical devices in transit to all participants of the supply chain.
With the integration, what we have done for this track and trace solution. So one is definitely the IoT sensor. So we used the temperature sensor, which we exposed a web API from Appian, which the sensor, whenever it triggers the threshold value, it actually calls that web API to inform Appian workflow that it has to be initiated the recall process, or maybe inform the driver with an SMS. And again, as I said, that for the SMS, we use Twilio integration with Appian. And as you guys might have heard in the keynote today, that Twilio would be a part of Appian the framework right now, after I think now from 19.2 onwards. So we use Twilio for this SMS integration. And then for other integrations, so we use the blockchain also, we used API, web API to integrate with the blockchains. And the whole workflow was built on the case management framework of Appian.